Namaskar. Hello friends. We have been looking at the concept of karma. There are two ways of interpreting the most important verse about karma, namely Karmanye wadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phalhetur ma sangostu akarmani. The most famous spiritual philosophy from Srimad Bhagavad Gita is in chapter 2, verse 47, namely Karmanye wadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. Its straightforward literal meaning is that one has right only to the action but not its fruit. This philosophy is the most misinterpreted too. The skeptics ask, how can one be motivated to work if he is not supposed to have a right to its fruit? Here is my attempt to put this philosophy in a proper perspective as I understand it. A human being is supposed to fulfill 4 different purusharthas, that is, human life missions. During his life, dharma, that is righteous way of living life, artha, that is earning one's living, kama, that is fulfilling reasonable desires, and moksha, that is liberation. The first 3 purusharthas, which are usually fulfilled during the first half of one's life, do indeed entail some interest in the fruit of one's action. One will not be able to plan and perform an action unless one has a clear idea of what one's objective is. A simple example is when one gets a desire to eat some sweet, he sets out for the sweetmeat shop and expects the outcome that when he buys and eats some sweets, his desire will get fulfilled. That way, the fruit of one's action is relevant in these purusharthas. However, still one must remember that one can walk to the sweetmeat shop, but he may find the shop closed and may not be able to actually satisfy his craving for sweet. In that sense, one has a right to the action of walking to the sweetmeat shop, but not the fruit of that action by way of actually getting to eat sweets and satisfying his desire. Now, as regards the last of the purusharthas, namely moksha or liberation, one should not even think about the fruit, simply because one is not clear as to what moksha really means. There are some descriptions like liberation from the repeated cycles of birth and death, self-realization, etc. But they are not verifiable and one does not know what it will be like. So this purushartha essentially consists of sadhana, that is spiritual practice by way of meditation, in the form of withdrawing one's mind from the physical world without any idea of what it will lead to. That sadhana is the only action, if one may call it, without any concrete idea of the fruit of that action. To give a crude example, it is somewhat like a person getting into a rage of anger and walking out of home without any thought of where he wants to go. Of course, a seeker of moksha is not angry with the world. He is simply weary of the worldly life, and hence he starts detaching himself from it in an attitude of complete surrender to the divine, in whom he puts all his trust as regards his remaining life and afterlife too, if there indeed exists something like it. Everything is just karma, even experience. Would you be able to accept the above straight away? Probably not. The reason is we seem to believe that karma, that is action, leads to experience. So we accept a cause-effect relationship between the two. So how can everything be only karma? Let me explain why I am saying that. I interpret experience in a different way. For example, when I eat a sweet, I get the experience of sweetness. So the action of eating sweet, that is the karma, led to the experience of sweetness. But what exactly is that experience? If you look at it physiologically, it is simply a particular action on the part of our taste centers, cells in our brain. The cells received a signal from our tongue, and they in turn created a certain reflection in our consciousness. That is the experience of sweetness. If you look at any experience, you will be able to interpret it in the above manner. Even ego experiences are also similar. Only thing is that ego hurt, for example, is experienced because of the way in which our brain, or say intellect or mind, whatever we may want to ascribe it to, it judged, evaluated an event against our conditioning. So again, the experience is action at some level. Some people may say that the so-called reflection in our consciousness is the experience, and it is different from the physical actions, which are really the karma. But I would like to argue that since we are conscious of even our action, why should we distinguish between the reflection of the so-called action and the so-called experience in our consciousness? Consciousness is simply a mirror that faithfully reflects whatever falls on it. Or I may say, consciousness is like water, which takes up whatever color you mix with it. Consciousness simply temporarily assumes a configuration, albeit like a memory location in a computer, taking a value of 0 or 1 temporarily. And this is the only fundamental process that manifests as action and experience. Revered Sant Shri Dnyaneshwar Maharaj describes this phenomenon in his own inimitable metaphorical way. He says that karma yoga, that is spiritual seeking through worldly action without bothering about its outcome, is never fruitless, because it is like a sandalwood tree which has no fruits, but its whole body gives out fragrance. So in other words, the existence of the sandalwood tree itself is like fruit. Similarly, karma itself is like fruit, and for a karma yogi, that is self-realized person engaged in worldly life, there is no other fruit apart from karma itself. Why should one put in his efforts? What is the point of making effort in this world if the whole thing is going to be decided on the basis of our past karma or predestiny? This is the most intriguing metaphysical question of all times. I feel it has no intellectual or rational answer. However, a satisfactory answer to my mind can come only from a holistic spiritual perspective. Also, the answer has to be found by everyone individually for oneself. Nobody else can answer it for you, because it is all dependent on one's own attitudes and thinking, one's own mindset. Following is my understanding of it. The two most fundamental aspects of this issue are a desire as a motive for action and the feeling of doership. That is, I have to do something to have my desire fulfilled. So long as these two are a driving force of my life, I will continue to do many things. Generally, I have my ideas of what needs to be done to achieve a particular objective, and I will do it. So, even if I may subscribe to the theory of past karma, I tell myself that the outcome can be a net result of my past karma plus my efforts. And since I do not know my past karma and the exact impact of it, I must do my best towards achieving my objective. In such a situation, actually the past karma should not be relevant at all as far as my actions are concerned. But the past karma, the theory, is handy as an explanation for certain unexpected outcomes. For example, I studied hard yet I failed. Why? Or certain unfair events like an infant dying that cannot be rationally explained. But when one attains a certain level of spiritual maturity, one is free from desires and one loses the sense of doership as well. Then he starts seeing the whole creation as a single whole that is working in accordance with a divine plan. He realizes that he is being moved or inspired by a divine force. He thus becomes a true witness by shedding the feelings of I am the doer and the enjoyer. So, in short, if you think you must do something to attain an objective, by all means go ahead and do it. Or rather, I would say, you will end up doing it in any case, irrespective of what you think about predestiny or past karma, etc. That is why Sri Krishna says in Srimad Bhagavad Gita that people are like robots, yantra rudhani, that is the word. He also likens the situation to a person sitting in a chariot and going wherever the chariot goes without he himself doing anything. This same thing applies to spiritual objective too. So long as I have this feeling of achieving an objective like moksha, that is liberation, and I still have the sense of doership, I will be moved to engage in sadhana, that is meditation, and such other spiritual practices in accordance with my own mental frame from time to time. So don't bother about that question or an answer to it. Rest assured, you will be acting in a manner consistent with your state of being. You want to have right to fruit? Then you must define the fruit correctly. Srimad Bhagavad Gita verse 47 of chapter 2, namely Karmanye wadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana, says that you have a right to only your action and not the fruit thereof. But there is a way to have a right to the fruit of your karma. Hold it, don't charge me with blasphemy. Let me explain. The trick is to define fruit of our action correctly. The more remote the expected fruit, the less right we have to it. It is like a mango on the top of the tree, on a branch thickly covered by many other branches. Even if we set out to reach that mango, we will keep going on to the wrong branches and may not manage to reach the mango. However, if the mango is on a low branch and is within our reach, we can definitely have it. Likewise, if we define the fruit as close to the action as possible, there is a better chance of our getting that fruit. For example, consider the scene when we set out to reach a particular destination that is reasonably far off. If we define the fruit as reaching the destination, the chances are that much lower because of many uncertainties, like getting a transport, a possible breakdown of the transport on the way, missing our way to the destination, etc. However, if we break down the fruit into smaller chunks and focus on only the immediate next fruit, such a fruit is more likely to be attained. For example, in the scene mentioned just now, we should define milestones on the basis of a